Alrighty, welcome back everyone. We just talked about spring practice and some intel from there, and now it's time to talk about the recruiting world. There is so much going on in the world of recruiting. Feels like the last couple of weeks have really heated up around there, and one of the guys that we have been watching very, very closely over the last couple of weeks has been Decorian Moore, the wide receiver out of Duncanville, Texas, a five-star, the number 3 player in the country. And you can imagine there are a ton of teams trying to push him to decommit from LSU. Currently committed to LSU along with two of the big-time offensive players in this next class, Bryce Underwood, the number 1 quarterback, and Harlem Berry, the number 1 running back, all committed to LSU right now. So they're sitting pretty in Baton Rouge, but a lot of people are coming after Decorian Moore. There are 3 teams that are really, really standing out. Oregon and Texas have been in this thing for a very long time, and I think Texas has been the team that a lot of people have pointed to as the biggest threat to LSU here, but also Ohio State making a very, very good push right now. He visited Ohio State recently, and like every other recruit that walks through Ohio State, was very impressed with Brian Hartline and the Ohio State program. So 3 schools definitely going after him very, very hard. LSU will do everything they possibly can to keep this guy committed, because if you watch any bit of his highlights, you can tell he is just different at the wide receiver position. I think he will be on campus in Austin for the April 20th spring game, so I think that will be a huge visit for Texas, and we'll see what happens with him. I think it's possible that we see a decommitment and then he kind of evaluates his options here, but at the end of the day, right now he's committed to LSU and seems relatively happy with that. Has not made any definitive statements, so I won't put words in his mouth by any means. And let's continue with the Ohio State train, because they were a team that popped up a lot when I was looking over some recruiting news over the last couple of days. And Brian Hartline, another guy that we just talked about that is doing his thing in the recruiting trail. He got Dazee Jones, a 4-star wide receiver, to commit to them over the last week, I believe, and he's got some big-time interest from some big-time guys. Jamie French, Jamie French, a recent decommit from Alabama. Ohio State is really zeroing in on. Tennessee is also another one to watch for Jeremy French. I think Ohio State might be out in front, but right now Tennessee is definitely pushing really hard for French's services, and it is no secret why, because the dude is an absolute beast. And then his teammate, actually, out of Florida, I believe they're from the Jacksonville area, Varnell Brown the third, another one that Ohio State is after. If they can land him, possibly Jamie French follows right along. So this could be a package deal that could be great for the Ohio State Buckeyes if they can pull it off. And then another update on the Ohio State offensive side of the ball before we get to the defensive side. Jordan Davison, a 4-star running back that a lot of people are after. I know Texas was playing a big-time role in that recruitment early on, but it seems like Ohio State is making more and more waves with this guy. He's very, very talented. He is someone that everyone is going to be after, and Ohio State does a great job with running backs, and they obviously just hired Carlos Locklin as their running back coach from Oregon. He talked about that a little bit, Davison did, and had big praise for him. Really, really likes him, loves what he does on the offensive side of the ball, so I don't think that hurts Ohio State chances at all. In fact, it might help them, being able to replace someone like Tony Alford with another remarkable running back coach in Carlos Locklin. So I think Jordan Davison sits very, very in a nice place, I guess, for the Buckeyes. And then let's get to the defensive side of the ball for Ohio State, because they have been making tons of waves there as well in the recruiting world. Tarvos Alford, a 4-star linebacker from Vero Beach High School in Florida, has committed to them. Also, Deshaun Stewart, another 4-star safety this time, committed. And then they got another one. London Merritt, a 4-star D lineman, has committed to join the Buckeyes. So on the defensive side of the ball, they are doing incredible things out there. Obviously, Jim Knowles came up a couple of years ago, and things have felt a little bit different around Columbus, Ohio when it comes to defense since he's arrived, and the recruiting is definitely mirroring that. They're getting tons of guys that they're going to need in this next era of Ohio State football, and I think if they have the year a lot of us are expecting them to have, they could definitely build out that even more. So very, very excited to see what they can do, because this recruiting class for Ohio State is shaping up to be absolutely insane. And then we got a little bit more wide receiver news out of the state of Mississippi. Caleb Cunningham is a top wide receiver in this class out of Mississippi, and Mississippi State obviously are the two teams that are after him the hardest and are leading the charge right now. But there are tons of teams that are still after him. I believe he's visited Alabama, Auburn, a ton of different SEC schools. And it seems like one of the big things in his recruitment is going to be getting that last visit. We talk about getting the last visit a lot in the world of recruiting because a lot of these guys, the lasting impression, you want the last word in this recruiting battle, and maybe especially in this one, because it sounds like Caleb Cunningham, when he goes on a visit, comes out of those very, very complimentary of those programs. Obviously, there's a ton of guys that do that, but it seems like he is heavily swayed during these visits. So someone like Mississippi State or Ole Miss, every single team that is after him pretty much, will be pushing to get that last visit. Now, that last visit is well down the road, probably towards the end of fall, but at the end of the day, he is someone that we will be watching very, very closely throughout this process. I would be a little bit surprised if he were to commit anywhere throughout this process until towards the end, but at the end of the day, if he goes to a certain visit, falls in love with the place, it could happen. So Caleb Cunningham is a huge piece. I know Mississippi State, with new head coach Jeff Lebby, is trying to get as many offensive talent guys in there as possible. And then Ole Miss, you talk about that offense all the time with Lane Kiffin and all the things they're doing up there. Getting someone like Caleb Cunningham would only help their cause. They obviously have Trey Harris there at wide receiver, so good number of recruiting tactics that Ole Miss can use, but also a number that Alabama can use, that Auburn can use, that all these other schools that are after him can use. So it'll definitely be interesting to see how his visits start to kind of roll out. There will be some during the summer, I assume, and then some throughout the fall towards kind of the winter when signing day is. So whoever gets the last word here might be the one that gets Caleb Cunningham's services, but we will definitely be watching that very, very closely. And another team that has been absolutely showing out, we talked about Ohio State earlier, and now it's USC. USC has been all over the news when it comes to the recruiting world, and they absolutely need to be. We talked about Lincoln Riley and his culture change a lot, and I might do actually a segment about that and talk a little bit more in depth, but he's checking all the boxes right now. There is a ton of things to do. There is so much to change out there in Southern California, but right now he is looking like he is doing everything correctly, especially in the recruiting world, and that's where everything starts, right? So they got Matai Tuaga. He's a four-star linebacker out of San Clemente, California. Definitely a guy you're going to need for this culture flip. You need big-time linebackers that can come in and play right away, and I think this guy could definitely be one of them. They have been on the recruiting trail getting all the right commitments, getting tons of guys that they need. They also got a 3-star commit at cornerback from Treston Castro. So Lincoln Riley, as of right now, is putting his money where his mouth is. And there were a lot of people that were worried about his ability to kind of execute the vision that he was talking about all this time. But I think he's more than capable. I think he's someone that can definitely make this work, and not only make it work, but become a national player on the offensive and defensive side of the ball, which would be great news for USC, would be great news for Lincoln Riley, because I think there are some people out there that are really starting to doubt him, and this flip will take time. There's no doubt about that. So I'm sure the USC brass is going to give him 2 or 3 years to really figure out, because it's essentially like he just got hired, because everything is changing around him and so many things are happening that he needs to happen. So it'll be interesting to see all this develop. Right now, he's answering the bell in recruiting, so you can only be happy if you're a USC fan right now, and then once games come along, we'll have a different conversation maybe. But to finish it off here, we had 2 big-time running back recruits, and then one of the best players in the country got a big-time crystal ball. But let's start with the running backs. Torrey Blaylock, a 4-star out of Humble, Texas. It might look like Humble. It is Humble. Has committed to Oklahoma, and Akeelan Deere is a 4-star out of Quitman, Mississippi, and he is committed to Lane Kiffin and the Rebels. So 2 big-time running backs off the board there. These running backs, we talked about Jordan Davison earlier, tons tons of really, really talented guys in this group, and Torrey Blaylock and Akil Ndir are two guys that absolutely are at the top of that list. So great news for these two SEC programs. Oklahoma is going to need big-time running backs going into the SEC, and the Rebels have done a really good job running the ball under Lane Kiffin. Obviously, a lot of these big-time offenses get started on the ground. You see the fireworks through the air, but if you don't have the running game, you can't have the passing game. So huge news for Lane Kiffin and the Rebels, huge news for Brent Venables and the Sooners. But let's finish it out here with the top recruit that we have talked about in this segment, the number 2 player in the country, David Sanders Jr., the top offensive tackle in the country, an absolute beast. He is just insane, and he got a crystal ball this past week from Tom Loy, a national recruiting analyst from 247 Sports, to Clemson. So it looks like the Tigers are leading in that recruitment. Need guys at the line of scrimmage, obviously, for Clemson, especially with someone like Cade Klubnik, who is more of a pocket passer, needs a little bit more time to survey the field and make his decision. I think this is a huge recruitment, and especially with how Clemson is trending right now, getting as many talented guys on campus, especially on those in the offensive and defensive lines, are absolutely huge. So tons of stuff happening in the recruiting industry, tons of stuff to keep track of as we will go into summer. Obviously, summer is a huge recruiting time, and then the fall, everything goes absolutely crazy. So we will keep you updated as more things happen. There will definitely be a ton more commitments here pretty soon. Spring games coming up, which are huge visit times. But we are going to take our second break here. When we come back, we are going to do best games of 2024. We've done this before a couple of times. We've done week 0 through week 6, and now we're on to week 7 and week 8, and they are just incredible matchups in this one. So stick with us, and we will be right back with that.